Last night, Liz Cheney lost her GOP primary in Wyoming to Harriet Hageman, and that was the expected outcome. I was pretty confident she was going to lose, but a lot of eyes were on the race for a couple big reasons. The first was just because Liz Cheney has garnered so much more prominence recently due to her standing against Donald Trump and his election lies, as well as being one of the leaders of the January 6th Select Committee that was looking into January 6th, as well as the events surrounding it and those anti-democratic actions by Trump and his allies. And so that's kind of the first reason she has become more prominent. And then connected to that is it does represent this somewhat of a battle going on, a significant one. I say somewhat because I don't think there's that much of a question of who's winning right now. I think kind of the MAGA Trumpster brand of republicanism is dominating within the Republican Party. That is the majority within the Republican Party. But it's still fascinating to watch this clash between more honest Republicans versus the Trump brand of Republicans, and Liz Cheney versus Harriet Hageman, who was backed by Trump in this race, is a great example of that. And we've seen a couple races that kind of had this resemblance where, you know, even Mike Pence would endorse one person and Trump would endorse the other, and then it kind of, you see a little proxy war going on there. Even though I think Liz Cheney represents an even more separate part of the Republican Party than even Mike Pence, because she's actually stood up against Trump even stronger than Mike Pence has, definitely. Mike Pence has actually been pretty weak with his words against Trump, compared to what I think he should have said after January 6th. And then obviously Adam Kinzinger is another good example of someone in the Liz Cheney camp. So that's fascinating to watch as this dynamic plays out within the Republican Party, even though in the case of Liz Cheney's primary, there wasn't a big question about who was going to win in my mind. Polling just seemed to show that Liz Cheney was going to have a really uphill battle if she wanted to have a chance. But it does represent the admirable nature of what she did, because the decision she made to tell the truth and to fight back against the lies that Donald Trump was telling directly caused her to lose her primary. So she's about to address that in part of her concession speech I'm about to show you. And then we're going to discuss what her future plans may be going forward. So here's part of her concession speech.
2 years ago, I won this primary with 73% of the vote. I could easily have done the same again. The path was clear, but it would have required that I go along with President Trump's lie about the 2020 election. It would have required that I enable his ongoing efforts to unravel our democratic system and attack the foundations of our republic. That was a path I could not and would not take.
So I think she's exactly right there. She definitely could have won her primary if she was just another Republican who went along with Trump's election lies, because that has become, in any district that isn't super moderate, any district that has heavy Trump sentiment, that is the litmus test. You have to believe the 2020 election was stolen, regardless of there being any evidence, regardless of there being no evidence to prove that. And that is what at least gives you a check mark in your box of being an option. And then if there's multiple people who tell that lie, then there's some sort of battle. But first off, the first box you have to check to be a Republican in any district that has heavy Trump sentiment is to believe the election was stolen, which of course is a complete lie. And so it's admirable, regardless of what you think of Liz Cheney in other contexts. It is very admirable that she chose the truth in this situation over her own political gain, temporarily. So that's kind of brings us to our next point. It seems to be a big conversation point when talking about Liz Cheney, seeing her lose this primary, of will she run for president? Now, when I hear that, it kind of confuses me, because I don't understand how she could run in the Republican primary based on these results and based on what we see polling wise. And I don't understand she definitely couldn't run as a Democrat. So the only option open would be an independent. Now, I guess people would argue with me maybe about if she could run as a Republican, if there's enough Republicans who would go along with someone who feuded so publicly with Trump. And that's a whole other thing. But I've, of course, pitched the idea of her running as an independent presidential candidate just to try to strip away some votes from the Republicans, grab some of that moderate Republican vote to try to help the Democrats. Now, of course, anytime you do a strategy like that, you're risking some Democrats also going over. But hopefully, if we had a good Democratic candidate, all the Democrats would go for that person, and then some moderate Republicans would go for the independent Liz Cheney ticket, which could strip away just enough to kind of destroy the Republican Party's chances, which I think if Liz Cheney's primary goal, which it seems to be, and she's expressed many times, is to keep Donald Trump out of the White House, and that's kind of the center point of her political ambitions right now, then her trying to do anything possible, even if it meant running for president, knowing she couldn't win as an independent, just to strip away some moderate Republican voters, that might be the most logical plan for her. And again, that's really risky. Hopefully moderate Democrats don't also do that, because then you might accidentally not do any good. But my thought is there's enough anti-Trump sentiment within the Republican Party who maybe would hop over to a Liz Cheney ticket, but would never hop over to a Democratic ticket, if that makes sense. Again, I think Liz Cheney has 0% chance of actually winning the presidency because, again, she couldn't run on two of the major tickets successfully in my mind. Feel free to disagree with me, but that's a big conversation topic. And so the first moment on the election day that got some coverage was her saying this is just the beginning of the journey, regardless of the results. So I'll show you that, and then she gets pressed on the question of running.
Stake today, Congresswoman?
Well, look, I think today, no matter what the outcome is certainly the beginning of a battle that is going to continue, is going to go on. And as a country, we're facing very challenging and difficult times. We're facing a moment where our democracy really is under attack and under threat. And those of us across the board, Republicans, Democrats, and independents, who believe deeply in freedom and who care about the Constitution and the future of the country, I think have an obligation to put that above party. And I think that fight is clearly going to continue.
Yeah. So her saying it's just the beginning of the journey does indicate that she has some larger political ambitions after losing the primary. But then after she actually did end up losing, she got pressed on the show today about this question of running for president.
The former president said last night you're now headed to political oblivion. You said this fight is just beginning. You've even launched a political organization already. So let's just be straight about it. Are you considering running for president yourself?
Well, what I'm going to do, Savannah, is spend the next several months completing my work in Congress, obviously completing my work representing the people of Wyoming. We have a tremendous amount of work left to do on the January 6th committee. And also, though, I'm going to be making sure that people all around this country understand the stakes of what we're facing, understand the extent to which we've now got one major political party, my party, which has really become a cult of personality. And we've got to get this party back to a place where we're embracing the values and the principles on which it was founded, and talking about, fundamental issues of civics, fundamental issues of what does it mean to be a constitutional republic.
But Congresswoman, you didn't answer me yes or no.
It takes to keep Donald Trump. I will be doing whatever it takes to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office.
Well, I know you didn't say yes or no, and that's fine if you're thinking about it. But are you thinking about it? Are you thinking about running for president?
That's a decision that I'm going to make in the coming months, Savannah. I'm not going to make any announcements here this morning, but it is something that I'm thinking about, and I'll make a decision in the coming months.
Let's go back to.
Okay, so she says she's thinking about it. Now, again, we'll always remind you whenever a politician is not planning on running for president for real, and they get asked that question, it's obvious. They go, oh, no, absolutely not. I would never want to be president. If they are thinking about it, that's the answer they give. If they are planning on it, that's the answer they give. So definitely, I think that's on the top of her mind. She started like a political organization, political action, something of some sort. And so I think she does have that ambition. Now, again, what the plan would be, I don't know. If it is just a larger strategic plan to try to make it impossible for the Republican Party to win in 2024 by stripping away some moderate voters to bring over to an independent kind of Republican brand, then that could be cool. But if she's actually thinking that she could win, I don't see any way that could happen unless some political realities changed real quick in America. But again, admirable. What she was doing in this moment is harder than I think many people are giving her credit for. I mean, many people in mainstream media are, but people online, a lot of progressives sometimes will be like, oh, well, of course she should have done this. It's the truth. Yeah, I agree with you. Everyone should do this. But you can put situations like this within the context of the country that we're in and the political realities in which we exist. And so right now we're in one where almost the entire Republican Party has to go along with Trump's lies. So when you stand against that, yes, you should get credit for it. And whenever you explicitly do something knowing that you're probably going to lose your upcoming race and get taken out of your position of power, but you do it anyways because it's the more high integrity move, then yes, you should get some credit for that. So obviously somewhat of a bummer that now we have a full-on Trumpster in that seat instead of Liz Cheney, but we will continue to watch to see what her future plans are. And maybe there's some sort of strategy out there that I haven't thought about that would make sense for her running for president. Who knows? But I definitely don't think, to my Democratic viewers, don't be getting in your head that we should get behind Liz Cheney as a Democratic option. I don't think she would run as that, but I heard some people saying I would vote for her. And I think you have to remember, standing for the truth is important, but it doesn't mean that policies don't matter. And she wouldn't stand for the policies that we believe in, right? And so all of the Democratic options stand against all of the people who would run within the Democratic Party, they all stand against Trump's lies. So the one thing that makes her special, all of the Democratic Party candidates that we could choose from would also do that. And they would have policies we believe in. So don't be getting in your head. I understand that we respect her now to an extent for what she did, but it doesn't mean that there aren't significant differences that matter. And so I would hope that even moderate Democrats don't accidentally get mixed up on that. But we'll see, and we'll continue to follow it very closely.